Hey there, and welcome to exercise number 98. If you want to solve this one on your own, then click on the link in the description. If not, keep watching and we're going to solve it together. In this one, we need to write a function named getCurry that receives one parameter. That parameter is also a function that takes a variable number of arguments and returns a value. And we're going to call this parameter callback. The function, so the getCurry function, should return a new function that we'll be able to call like in the examples below. And I did a small note here saying that this function, so this exercise, is similar with the currySum one, and I highly encourage you to take a look and try to solve that one before solving this one. Now, let's look at the examples below so we can see what we need to implement. I have here a sum function that accepts a variable number of parameters. And what it does, it adds all of those parameters, right? So this sum function can get 2, 3, 4, it can even get 1 or 0 parameters, and it will add all of them and return the result. Next, I'm going to pass this sum function as a callback parameter to getCurry. And I'm going to get another function. So this is the function returned by getCurry. And here is where things get interesting. If I call this currySum without any parameters like this, I'm going to get 0. It's like calling sum function without any parameters. Then I call it with one parameter, number 1, that will return a function. I'm going to call it again without any parameters, like take a look here, and the result is going to be 1. It's going to add the number that we gave it, and it's just 1. Moving on to the third line, we can see we call currySum once with number 1, then the result is a function, we call it again, and then we call it again without any parameters. And the result of all of this is going to be 3. So it will add 1 plus 2. And you can see here that why is it adding things and why is it not doing anything else? Because this is what the sum function is doing. So this currySum is going to be invoked many times until we call it without any parameters. And then all of those parameters are going to be passed to the sum function because this is what we sent to it. And it's going to do its logic, which in this case is going to add them. Now below we have another example. So let's say we pass a diff function that's going to take one or more parameters and it's going to subtract them one from another, right? So you can see here, we start from the first parameter or 0 if there's nothing, and then we take all of the parameters starting from index 1 and we subtract them from the result. Now I'm gonna pass this function diff to getCurry, and I'm gonna get a curry diff. If I call it without any parameters, it's like calling diff without any parameters, so I'm gonna get 0, right? Because the result is gonna be 0, I just return it. Then here I can also call curryDiff with 1. I'm going to get another function. I'm going to call that with 10. I'm going to get another function, and that one I'm going to call without any parameters. In which case, all of those params so far, so 1 and 10, will be passed to diff, and the result will be -9. Moving on to the last function, I'm going to call curryDiff with 100. Then I'm going to get another function that I'm going to call with 10, then another one with 20, and so on, until I call it without any parameters. Then again, all of those, so 100, 10, 20, and 30, are going to be sent to the diff function, and the result is going to be, well, what diff is going to do with them, which is subtract them. So it's going to be 100 minus 10 minus 20 minus 30, which is going to be 40. So I know this is, kind of complicated, and it's supposed to be complicated because we only have 3 exercises left. But the idea of this exercise is to have a function which accepts a variable number of parameters. So for example, we have sum, and we can call it 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But we actually want to get a currySum function that we can call like this. And it's going to be the same exact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and without anything. So we want to start from a function like this, pass this one as a parameter, and get a function like currySum that can be called like this, and we get the same result. Like, that's the idea behind it. Okay, so now that we read the description, and I hope things are much more clear, let's go here into the code. So this getCurry function needs to return another function, and I'm gonna just create it here. Curry function is gonna be a function, and let's just return it, right? Return curry function. Now, the idea of the exercise, as mentioned before, is to have a function with variable params, like this one, and call it in a different way, kind of. But we're still going to need those params because we need to call the sum function like this, right? It's just like some magic behind that we call currySum like this, but behind the scenes, at the end, sum is going to be called like this. So what I mean by that is I'm going to put here some params. right? And I'm gonna do the first if params.length is 0. So if I don't have any params, I'm just gonna return callback and I'm gonna call it. And this fixes our first use case. So if I'm gonna copy paste the code from here, we should get 0. And we don't get 0 because I didn't copy paste everything. Yeah. So I need to do this and we get 0. Okay. Now we're gonna look at the second example. So it's gonna be this one. Now I need to call it once. So this one curry function here is gonna be called with one parameter. And then that one will return another function, right? Because I call it again. So here I'm gonna need return function inner curry. That's gonna get another parameter. So let's just call this one, param. Actually, I don't want to call it param because it's going to be too close to param. So let's just call it data, right? This can be anything. I don't really know. It depends on the function that we pass initially, right? So for sum and diff, those are numbers, but it can be anything else. Now, if this one is undefined, we're in the situation at line 28, in which we're going to call the initial function with just one parameter. So I can say if data is undefined, I'm going to return callback of params. So if I now uncomment this code, we should get 1, which is true, right? So we get params. Params is number 1, an array with 1. Then we have length 0, no. We move on. We return another function. We're going to call this one without any params. So we get in this if, and we return the callback, which is going to be like sum, right? So here it's going to be something like this, sum of 1. Okay. And now comes the interesting part, in which we kind of need to do some recursion, because you can see we have a function that we call again and again and again. So we're kind of like in a loop until we have no more params. So here I'm going to say, okay, if this is not undefined, then I'm going to return curry function of, I'm going to take the params I have so far, and I'm going to put this one to the end. And if I do this, I keep adding params until I get one here without any, until I get here without any data param, and then I'm gonna get the result. So let me test the third one, and you can see we get number 3, which is great. Now we can try it again. So let's say 2, and then here I'm gonna do 3, and we should get 6. Okay, this looks good. Now we can try with the second example. So let me just copy paste this function, and I'm gonna take this one here, and we should get 0, -9, and 40, which is great. Now I know this is one of the more complicated functions. This is why we have it at number 98. So I highly encourage you to debug it. Go through it step by step if you don't understand it. I'm going to do that here one more time. So let's say we call which one? Let's take the sum function because that's more easy to understand. And let's say we're going to call this last example. So I'm just going to put it here. Now what's going to happen? So currySum, we first call it with 1. So here we're going to get params is going to be 1. Then we have, hey, is length 0? No. Then I'm going to return a new function. Then this one is going to be 2. So data is going to be 2. Is it undefined? No. Then I'm going to go here to curry function, and I'm going to take all the params. So here I'm going to take 1, 1, and then I'm going to also put 2. So it's going to be like this, like those are the params. I'm going to go back to curry function, where now I'm going to have 1, 2. Okay, is the length 0? No. Then I'm going to go here, return another function. Now data is going to be undefined. So I'm going to call the callback, right, which is our sum function with those params 1 and 2, which is going to add them, and voila, we have the result. Now let's test the solution. I forgot to do that before I close the video. So let's just test it, and voila, it works. Cheers, and see you in the next one.